Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I am the host of the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, a show right here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we take a deep look at individual issues and stories that are going on in the wrestling world. Each episode is about a different topic, and we take a thorough and educated look at things ranging from current booking trends to breakdowns on individual performers and angles to investigations into different fan cultures across the industry. In addition, we keep a close eye on the wrestling media, and as a professional journalist, I bring a unique perspective to how current issues in wrestling are being covered and discussed through the wrestling media. We have a revolving series of guests from across wrestling punditry joining us on each episode, and we hope that you make the choice to give us a listen on wherever you get your podcast from.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Ballot, the show where the conversation begins. I'm your host, Ryan Knightsey, and today we are heading down south of America, I guess, because I think last time we were in Japan. So we're going down South America, heading over to the Mexico region for the second to last new nominee on the ballot this season, but the last wrestler from the Mexico region that is new on the ballot this year. And that is, we were talking about Coloso Colosetti, an Argentinian wrestler that moved to Mexico and became a pretty well-known name. And obviously we'll talk about how big of a name he certainly became. I think there's a good amount of people that don't necessarily know who he is, which is also part of the conversation we're going to have today. So look, you're going to get... Folks at home, we're going to be learning today. Trust me, we're going to be learning a lot about Coloso Colosetti. So without further ado, my guest today to help me discuss this, we had him on last year, talking about the rest of the world region. He's now moved over with me to the Mexico region here. Ethan Tyler, welcome back to the show.
It's a pleasure to be back, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I always wanted to get you on these shows, obviously, because you're so incredibly knowledgeable and well researched. But also, I knew I envisioned an idea in my head in terms of scheduling when I look at these lists of like, you know what, Ethan's so great. I can just move him around the board and just slot him anywhere. You know, last year we did rest of the world. This year we're doing Mexico. I don't know what's in store for you next year, but it's looking like Japan or modern US and Canada. Maybe you'll talk about the next Kane that pops up in the ballot, or if historical ever gets somebody, then maybe there. But you're a guy that can move around. So for me, when it comes to scheduling, a great gift from heaven.
It's my preferred use, to be honest. I don't want people thinking, oh, he's British, UK candidates, and that's it. That's that. You'll stay in that. No, I like to move around, and yes, I like this.
Well, then perfect. Well, let's talk about Coloso Colosetti. Obviously an Argentinian wrestler, as I said, who moved to Mexico and very quickly became a Mexican headliner in here. Ethan, I'll start over with you. Sort of. I feel like I know what this answer is going to be, but what is your sort of connection, if you have one, with Coloso Colosetti?
Not much of a connection, really. I mean, I would have first seen him in the New Japan tapes in the 80s, I'm sure, and you know, he's just a guy. And then when he passed away in 2024, I obviously read Dave's obituary with interest, and you know, Dave was wondering whether to put him on the ballot, and I thought, okay, should we put him on the ballot? And you start thinking about it a little bit. I honestly expected him to be on the ballot last year if Dave was going to pull the trigger on that one. He wasn't. So I thought, oh, maybe Dave changed his mind. No, just, you know, small little delay and he's on here now. So yeah, I'm familiar with the name. I saw him wrestle a little bit, but beyond that, no real connection.
Which I am not shocked at all. I think we talked a little bit before the podcast started about how Colosetti, although he is a headliner in the 70s of Mexico, and obviously there are various different reasons about why his name might not have gotten more recognition when it comes to, you know, an American audience, let's say. It's a name that I think like a lot of people just simply won't know who he is unless you're super in depth or maybe not even super in depth, but if you're just knowledgeable more about like 70s lucha or 80s lucha to a certain degree, it is a name that I'm like I said, I don't think a lot of people know who he is. He passed away a couple years ago, and I can see why Dave maybe didn't put him on last year, because if I recall, no one went into the Mexico region 2 years ago. So maybe Dave, I feel like, does that sound right? I feel like that's um
I feel like I think we've been getting inductions every year for a while now. I could be wrong.
But my immediate thought to that was like, I don't think anyone came in because I thought it was because we were just going to hold off, and because there was going to be a push for like Darrell Dixon as well. Maybe I'm conflating things. Either way, Colosetti's on here now. I mean, we can start talking about him a little bit. We're going to talk about a lot of different things as well towards the end of this episode. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start there, Ethan. In sort of a historical context, what do you sort of know about in your research? What have you sort of discovered in terms of historical biography, just generally speaking? Anything that sticks out of you about Colosetti?
I mean, the first thing that I thought was interesting is that he debuted in 1962 in Argentina, and he first got to Mexico in 1969. Mm-hmm. So immediately my brain goes, okay, what's going on there? 7 years. And the problem is trying to track him in South America is incredibly difficult because he had so many different names. And these are common names. So for example, sometimes he would wrestle as a masked character called Batman. Loads of guys did this. That's not really helping me. Tarzan, not really helping me there either. El Fantasma Blanco, that's not a huge help either. So going through the archive, I couldn't figure out. I thought maybe Chile. Maybe he might have been there. Those attendance figures and sort of arena capacity limits were low enough where it wouldn't really matter even if he was. It wouldn't be relevant to a Hall of Fame conversation.
I'll just quickly say in here, shouts out to our good new friend Dr. Lucha, who has the list here in front of me. Helio, which was Colosetti's real name, he went by the names El Apollo Argentino in Colombia, El Entrador 2 in El Salvador, Batman in Guatemala, Tarzan with an S de Oro in Peru, Chile, and Bolivia, and then a little bit of Central and South America as well. And then obviously when he eventually went to Mexico, he went by El Internacional, however you pronounce that, and then eventually changed it to Coloso Colosetti.
Yeah, I think he was El Internacional at the end, right, very, very late in his career, like late 80s, early 90s or something. I seem to remember he used that name as well. But yeah, so that makes things difficult in terms of just tracking. And for a historian, that's a pain. If I don't have photos, I'm fucked, basically. So that's a little complicated. But in terms of his Mexico career, which is obviously the bulk of what we're going to have to talk about, from 1969 until I think his last message was somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s or something. There is plenty to talk about there. He even worked America pretty regularly. I mean, basically full-time for a couple of years from 78 to 79. Not as a headliner, but, he was here for a while. He is a fairly big name in Guatemala as an opponent for Jose Aretzi, who is like what Ted Boy Marino is to Brazil. Jose Aretzi is going to be to Guatemala. I mean, he's like a huge... He's the guy that, like, if Ric Flair's coming in with the NWA title, you've got to be careful about the result there because it could go very badly for you as the foreigner. So, he was one of those. So, yes, I mean, he's a big name there. And I think he wrestled Italy. I'm sure I've seen his name in Italy at some point as well. Oh, so, there's bits and pieces there. But again, the bulk of the case is going to be Mexico.
Yeah, of Italian descent, so that Italy connection certainly makes sense. His dad was Italian. Sort of like you said, the Rocco thing there, where his dad was Italian, left for South America for World War One, and that's where Colosetti was born, I guess. Yeah, and then worked in California, worked in Texas for Southwest Championship Wrestling for the Blanchards. He won a couple titles. He came in, quote unquote, into Mexico with the America's title, quote unquote, because if I'm not mistaken, that was fiction. Yes. He won a couple titles, won a couple tag titles. The big thing that we're talking about that is like one of the big moments of his career is the title match, or sort of the feud, but also title switches with Ray Mendoza for the NWA World Light Heavyweight Championship, which at the time was like the big title in Mexico. I think I saw somewhere that people said that like, oh, if Mexico recognized the World Heavyweight Championship, Colosetti could have won it. I don't know about that. What do you think about that?
Yes, I think it was, especially in regards to the Mexican national, because they had two. Mexico has different, even within the same weight division, they have two different titles.
Yeah.
So you have the Mexican heavyweight champion, which is below the world, because obviously if you're the world champion, that's a bigger deal, right? But the problem with the heavyweight stuff, even if you want it, the heavyweights in Mexico very rarely were the top division or the top stars because there just wasn't enough wrestlers in Mexico who were heavyweights. So like people like Kinnick are an outlier. Like that's not normal. And in his era, in Colosetti's era, late 60s through to the 70s, the light heavyweight title was basically the world title. That headlined all the time. That had, you know, the Ray Mendozas and Rene Gallardos and all these huge stars were headlining with this thing. Like that is the belt you want if you were in Mexico at the
time. Yeah, I think Dave wrote that in his obit. Wrote that little note there. Colosetti, basically a pretty boy gimmick. Guy took lots of pictures in magazines, lots of pictures of girls. Various stories about him dating girls and whatnot, dating models or whatever. So which goes into the thing that we'll talk about more is that constant hair versus hair matches. Where he was, you know, part of the gimmick of shaving the pretty boy's head is something that I think a lot of the audience will appreciate, but also the sheer number of hair versus hair matches, a free haircut, a paid haircut for you is always a good payday indeed. I don't know. I mean, it's I feel like that's a significant enough bio to get people started. So Ethan, let's talk about his working ability here. There isn't like a lot of Mexican wrestling, a lot of the older stuff. There isn't a lot of footage. There's a little bit of 70s stuff. There's a little bit of Southwest Championship Wrestling stuff out there. A better number of his 80s stuff, at which point, as we'll talk about, is a little bit weaker. But obviously some of the 70s stuff is also from various movies that he was in. Ethan, ultimately though, maybe not ultimately, but let's get in the weeds of it. What were your thoughts on his working ability?
I think he was a good worker in his prime, and not so much once you got to the 80s, where he was, you know, he was okay, but nothing to write home about. So for the 70s, as you correctly pointed out, in terms of footage, we just don't have, there is no quality footage for us to be able to accurately gauge how good he was. You've got to be a little careful in terms of context, because in Mexico, he would have been given far more opportunities to work to his full capability compared to Texas. Because in Texas, if you look at those results, he's basically a jobber.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how much opportunity he would have gone to, hey, go out there and do your thing or whatever.
I watched one match with him versus Henry Garcia, I believe his name was, in Southwest. It was like a 2-minute match. Nothing really happened. And then we moved on. Yeah,
he very much underneath, put this guy over and let's get out of there. It wasn't a big deal. In LA, it may have been a little different. Again, not exactly a notable star there, but Dave would have seen him in LA in the 70s. Dave always said this guy was a good wrestler in the 70s. That is supported by the overall lucha media reports on him in real time. Plenty of like, this match was good, this match was good, this guy was good. You know, I feel I don't have the ability to see him during that time and to analyze it. The people who did say he was good, that's good enough for me. I don't, you know, see any reason to debate it. In the 80s, look, he transitions. He's in his 40s. He was born in 1938. In the 80s,
just a real quick distinction: he was in his 40s, not his 30s or anything.
No. Okay, so yes. So for the listeners, some places you'll see his date of birth written as 1948.
I tried to tee this guy up over here.
I was like, what are you talking about? Oh, yes. Okay. In some places you'll see his birth date is written as 1948, including WrestlingData.com, which I know the listeners, there's somebody who works there who's listening to this. You got to fix that, man. Okay, it's not 1948. Okay, it's 1938. He lied about his age because, of course, he did. Right? He's a good-looking dude. You don't want the promoters to know that. Oh, actually, this guy's a lot older than he looks.
Well, also, his gimmick is a pretty boy. I'm going to be more attracted to like the 30-something than the 40-something.
Yes, there was no benefit to him telling the truth when it came to his age. So yes, by the time you get to the 80s, he's in his 40s. Plenty of New Japan footage that you can see of him wrestling there. He wrestled great wrestlers. I mean, he wrestled Fujinami and others there. But
Tiger
he's
Mask,
very much, yeah, he's very comedy lucha by the time he gets there. Certain comedy spots to get a good part. There's not a lot of substance there. He's older, he's just a lot older.
Well, also like a little bit of Mexico, but especially in Japan, especially wrestling like a guy like Tiger Mask. He's older. He is not going to be able to keep up at all with the sort of athleticism and speed of the guys he's wrestling in Japan, and I imagine to a certain degree, obviously, in Mexico, as the younger guys start coming up.
I mean, there were guys in Tiger Mask who were coming up with him that couldn't hang with him.
That's true. That's true.
If you're from a previous company, he was mind-blowing talent globally. I mean, I don't know how many people realize that, but he was like, oh, okay, this is totally different.
Would you like a contemporary opinion on his wrestling ability and his wrestling style?
Sure.
So I've been watching, obviously, Colosetti footage in preparation for this show. And for whatever reason, my wife decided to sit down and watch his wrestling. She's not like necessarily a wrestling fan. She certainly enjoys it to the extent that I can convince her to go along to shows and have fun and drink beer. She watched him wrestle. And I want to say it was his 80s stuff. More of those like trios matches and there was a couple single stuff out there, but it's mostly like trio stuff. And she out of the blue turned to me, said that he wrestles like Snidely Whiplash, that he basically wrestles like a cartoon heel villain out in the ring, which as soon as I said it, I was like, oh, fuck, you're right. You're right. Like it is when you're talking about, this style of wrestling and cartoony heel, it is like this big over the top, these big like Polish hammers. He like jumps into the rope when he bounces off of it. His mannerisms and how he sort of like walks around the ring is very cartoony as well. Weirdly, this might also sound crazy. It reminded me of, hear me out, hold. It reminded me a little bit of Kenny Omega's heel run, where Kenny was doing like, he was like walking weirdly and all these Polish hammers and how he ran and hit the ropes a little bit. That it reminded me simply on movement, Ethan. I want to be clear, simply on movement, not wrestling ability at all, but just how he moved in the ring was like, I assume Kenny's going for an anime heel cartoon character at the time. Colosetti wasn't far off. He is moving and wrestling way slower, way less flippy do and flying and cool stuff, but wrestling like a cartoon heel, like a Snidely Whiplash. How does that do, Ethan, for a review of someone's wrestling ability?
I understand the comparison.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't expecting on this show for us to compare Coloso Colosetti to Kenny Omega in every way. That one caught me off guard a little bit.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
It's a compliment. Look, Kenny's one of the great ones.
I think it's a compliment.
It's a huge compliment.
Yeah, look, again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying in any way, like he is very slow. He is not moving much in the ring. There is a trios match with I don't remember everyone that's in the trios match, but it's a match that has was it Masawa in it? And Shiro Koshinaka in it, I want to say. And El Dandy is also in the trios match. I believe Cole said he's teaming with El Dandy. It's the match, the video starts halfway through, presumably it cuts in and out just because of the VHS quality and all that jazz. Colosetti did almost nothing in the match, and I want to say this was 83. He did it was almost like Ethan, almost like Junkyard Dog levels of nothing in the match. There are multiple moments where everyone else is wrestling, he'll run in and like the third guy on the babyface team comes up and about to do something. Colosetti immediately backs off and then escapes and leaves the ring. Like it's multiple times where this guy is just not doing. And again, cartoon heel, cartoon villainy, but he is practically doing nothing out there, but getting strong reactions because he was the crowd, as much as I can hear from a VHS tape recording and bad quality, was booing everything he was doing. So he was definitely over to a certain degree. Just he couldn't really work, certainly in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned this off air. The one thing the listeners need to keep in mind with a lot of these luchadors is that they got beat up real quick. Okay, the Mexico conditions, I'm not just talking Arena Mexico. They were working much smaller places than Arena Mexico, indie rings and everything else. We're talking dirty, muddy, hard rings that these guys had to bump in all the time. Lucha is not a very easy style to do in those kind of conditions. And there is a little bit of a correlation that once these guys get into their late 30s, they just fall off a cliff. Blue Panther is a very rare exception to that rule. He's also not really a 70s, 80s guy. He's more 90s, really. But if you look at, and again, we mentioned this off air, like Sangre Chicana, who was fucking great in his time, you get to 86 and boom, it is over. And you're looking at, even the lucha media would be like, what the fuck just happened? This guy used to be great, and now all of a sudden he's just there. He's just a dude. It happens, man. These guys just get, El Dandy had the same problem, especially when he came back from WCW. He was just, they get beat up, and instead of taking time off, they can't afford to do that, right? You just have to keep going, and you need to get paid. So I think with Colosetti, especially when we're talking early 80s, he's in his mid-40s. He is slower, right? You can just see it, right? This is not prime Colosetti. So yes, in the 80s, there's nothing. I couldn't give you a single like match recommendation to watch, or there's nothing there. There really isn't. He's past his prime. But in the 70s, as we said, Dave says the guy is good. I'm always going to listen to that. He's one of the great historians that we have. I will take that seriously. And the lucha media backs him up. The lucha media, if you were terrible, they would say so. They're pretty blunt. So he doesn't have anything like that. So my view is that he was probably good until you got to that point where he wasn't. Right? He just got beat up. Rely on the gimmick, as you said, over the top character work, because I can't do anything else. I just got to do what I can here.
Well, especially I imagine not just the ring changes your body and all these sort of things, the 2-for-1 bumps car that it is, but also just like keeping up the younger guys. You're probably getting these younger guys who are doing more, slowly doing more stuff in the ring. That's like, well, I can't keep up with that. What sets me apart from them? I can't work to that level in any real way anymore. I'm just going to change my style, be a more cartoon, lean into the heel, antics and all that jazz, and still, get myself over to a degree. But I forget when it was, mid 80s, I think, is at a certain point he starts becoming like an undercard guy. Obviously, that's more of the drawing stuff, but like, it's he keeps in it as long as he can. And then is it fair to say, just to look at both edges of it? No one said he was a terrible wrestler. Is it fair to say that he was good, not great?
Yes. I don't see the anecdotal evidence to suggest that, he was some missing Hall of Famer that we've underrated for decades, or he was Stairs level, or he was Gallardo level, or if he was, Raymond Mendoza level. Like, no, I don't see any evidence to indicate that. But he had good matches, that they would always bring up in the Lucha Press. They'll always mention when it's like, best match of the night, best match of the month, best match of the... He's in those kind of things, including singles. So, where you can't hide. Trios, who you could be terrible and still have a phenomenal trios match. Like, it's been done. But that tells me the guy was good, again, until he hit a certain point. To be honest, if you're declining the way he did with that severely, you really don't want to go to New Japan in the early year. I mean, that's a terrible place to go if you're declining. I mean, he got exposed even worse because of where he is and who he's, as you said, right? He's sharing the ring with Fujinami and Koshinaka and Tiger Mask and all these dudes. And it's like, man, I just can't keep up with these guys. And again, to be fair to Dave, who always said he was good, he also brings up the fact that once you get to New Japan, he's slow. Yeah. He's too slow. He just can't hang with these guys anymore, which is true. which the footage backs it up.
I think that's good enough for his working ability. Let's start talking about his drawing power. I guess the strongest. I mean, there's definitely enough there. I would say it's probably his strongest category here. There's definitely different periods of his career as well that we'll sort of talk about. But he comes in. I believe we said 1969. He comes in to Mexico. I couldn't really find any sort of real data when it comes to his Central and South American wrestling attendance stuff. But he comes in Mexico in 69. Pretty quickly goes up the card to sort of that top tier, and of course this is in EMLL at the time, and he does really well throughout the 70s. Ethan, what was your sort of discoveries on his early attendance figures?
Well, I wasn't interested in him immediately because the minute he gets there in late 69, they push him up the card. He's feuding for the light heavyweight title. He's going to start feuding with Ray Mendoza. Mm-hmm. I love Ray Mendoza. Ray Mendoza was an indigenous Hispanic wrestler, and those people in Mexico have always been discriminated against. Like, if you're not a certain type of Hispanic, you're held down there. You just are. He broke through because this dude was so charismatic. He came from a rival promotion in the 50s. He got to the top because the fucking fans were behind him. Like, I haven't seen a single footage of his, but just reading everything, I'm like, oh yeah. I know what this, like, it's Dusty Rhodes or something. Like, I can just see it, right? He's one of the great ones. So he comes in, wins the light heavyweight title, holds it for a while, mm-hmm. and he's feuding basically on and off through, I think, mid 1970 with Ray Mendoza. And look, we don't have all the attendance figures for that time, but there are reports that these guys were drawing huge crowds at Arena Mexico. It's going to be 10,000 plus pretty comfortably. Against Ray Mendoza, against Rejo de Jalisco, when he main events against him, that's definitely going to be a big crowd too.
That's a title defense as well.
Yeah. And then you've got like tags that were sellouts. Him and Rene Gallardo against El Santo and Yamamoto, which was Kentaro Hoshino, who's one of the Yamaha brothers, for those who know Japan's history. That was a sellout. The match at the 14th anniversary against Ray Mendoza, record gate for Arena Mexico, sellout.
At the time, to be clear, at the time, record gate, all-time gate.
Yes. And even the Coliseo numbers, which obviously, we're talking 6,000, but record gates, consistently strong Coliseo numbers, because, I mean, it's hard for people to understand this if you've just got into CMLL over the last couple of years, but they didn't always run Arena Mexico every week. It depended on if they had the business to do it. Like, sometimes they would have seasons and certain times off, and Coliseo is where they really leaned for a lot of their story stuff, just depending on, how strong the business was going to be. And then there's another match with Ray Mendoza, which is a hair semi-main for his hair that I think he loses as well. But on top, you've got Solitario versus Gallardo, which is a big deal. So look, man, sellouts, record gate, like 1970, like the Coloso Colosetti is a legitimate, great draw. Credit to the promoters because they knew what to do with him immediately. Okay, they saw the way he looked, and they're like, cool, you're a cool Rudo. You're a good-looking, cocky, arrogant Rudo. You've got the women that these fans want and can't get, right? And you're going to fight against their friends. Like, they knew immediately, oh, yeah, we know exactly who this dude is.
Yeah.
They knew a lot better than the Argentinian promoters, who apparently didn't do anything nowhere near as successful with him. So, huge 1970 thing.
I also saw, just throw in here on 1970, I saw a 15,000 show with Jose Azari as well. Is one number I threw out for 1970.
That one was not in Mexico. That one, yes. Jose Azari was...
It was not in Mexico, but I wanted to point it out.
I think that was it 70? Was it 71?
I saw that it was 70.
I think it was 71. Because he went there a few times. He was there in 76 and stuff, but I think it was 71. And like you said, 15,000 plus. And Jose Azari, for the listeners, he was a guy, if you just look at Mexico, he's an underneath nobody, really. He's an opening act guy. He's not a big deal in Mexico. In Guatemala, he is what Ted Boyd Marino, for those who've listened to that show of Ryan, was to Brazil. He was a huge star. Like, he's a guy that, I've got to be honest, I'm very tempted to push on Dave to get him into the rest of the world section because I think he belongs. For Guatemala, he is the guy. And Colosetti was a huge, like, he made a big impact because you will find blogs and reports decades later where they talk about what a great rival he was to Jose Azari and like one of the big, he made a big impact there. He drew big time. in 1971. Another thing I'll mention in 71 related to his ability, there is a tag with him and Carlos Lagarde against Alberto Munoz and Garo Kacharian, who I'm not familiar with that one. Match of the year contender, apparently, Ryan.
Oh,
Yeah.
match of the year contender. My
Match of
God.
the year. Not the night, the year.
year.
Yeah. So there you go.
Okay. Hey, bonus points. I don't know how many, but bonus points. But yeah, but we're talking about like you just said, he comes in and immediately business, big numbers, big business, quotes, another big crowd, large crowd, sellout, all-time gate numbers. He's putting the tattoo on his tricep. Doing really well. And then what sort of happens after 71? I think he continues doing well. He's continued to be on top, but I'm not seeing as many numbers and figures post 71.
You will still find him in like a bunch of like multi-man main events in Coliseum and Arena Mexico. The singles collapsed completely.
Yep.
For in the early 70s until I think there's some interesting stuff in 74 and 75.
Mm-hmm.
He does main event against El Nazi, which the listeners can guess what that gimmick was. In a hair match, right? That a main event again in Arena Mexico. And then he starts multiple hair matches. It's him, yes. It's him and Angel.
Hold on. Who's the heel of that good match? I don't want to double down, but who's the heel of that hair? Who am I cheering for in a hair versus hair match?
I'd love to say El Nazi. Oh yeah, definitely El Nazi. But Mexico's history, if you go back a few decades from here, is I don't know. Unfortunately, I can't.
Little dicey.
Little dicey on that end. So yes, they main event, and then again multi-mans, and there's a sellout 6-man with Tiniabolis returning.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he was the big draw for that one, though. To be fair, some tags with him and Angel Blanco, hair versus hair tags. Him and Angel Blanco tagging against Wagner and Ringo Mendoza. That would have been great because Blanco and Wagner just split up. That would have been awesome. Those probably did quite well. 75, he does have a tag feud with Los Diablos. Los General Diablos, who were a major team, heel Rudo team in 75. They turned on him, so they're technically the real Rudos here.
Yep. There's a couple those are a couple of the matches. It's him teaming with the Twin Devils. Those are some of the matches that exist. But yes, they turn on him eventually.
Yes, and that long story eventually leads to a hair versus hair match where he teams with Adorable Ruby against the Diablos. That's a sellout
anniversary show.
Yep. And also important to point out for that anniversary show, Blanco Wagner for the light heavyweight title is in the semi-main.
Yeah,
that's a big semi-main.
Yeah,
but a lot of those anniversary shows were like that. Like you look at the main events, big. If you look underneath, there's a it's like a WrestleMania card. Like there's a bunch of big matches for it. So
yeah,
there's something there for 74, 75. It is mostly tag work.
Yeah. Do you think that is a lack of events for him, or do you think that's just a lack of data?
Well, it's not because if you look at the events, he's overwhelmed. Factually, he's overwhelmingly in multi-man matches. Mm-hmm. There just isn't a lot of singles work.
Yeah.
It's mostly tags, 6-mans, and I mean, there's loads of those. 6-man mains, you'll find plenty of them because trio mains were a big deal in Mexico. But I look at this in 4 and 5, and I think, look, it's longevity on top, but mostly in a tag capacity, right? That has to be sort of noted. For those years. And then in 76, he's basically out of CMLL. 70, at least temporarily. He'll be back later. But 76, he's out of there. That's when Francisco Flores and Ray Mendoza, Mora, etc., they broke away from CMLL. They created what people would even know as the UWA or the LLI, had a bunch of different names. And he joins them, which is a fantastic move, considering what's coming up soon.
Mm-hmm.
And again, he's in 77, multi-man main events do exist in places like El Cortillo and Cuatro Caminos, which is, big bull rings that are capable of holding huge audiences. And he is in multi-man mains, sparingly, granted, during those years. That he leaves temporarily goes to America.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing relevant from a drawing perspective in terms of what he did in America. Yes, he main evented with Chavo Guerrero once in LA, but LA in 78, 79 is in dire straits. Like, it is bad. It's about to be killed off completely. I think it dies in 81.
He's working California, Texas, central states.
I mean, Kansas is. I mean, go talk to the boys about Kansas. Like, you didn't like unless you were a beginner or somebody who nobody else wanted. You didn't want to be in Kansas. Like, that was just the reality of it. You weren't going to get paid much. It's a I have to type deal. So he didn't really do much in America, but then he comes back in 80, Ryan, and this is where we actually have the data, we have the facts and figures, we have the attendance figures specifically. And, he's a extremely productive fourth wheel for a while. Him and Connect against Dos Caras and Mil Máscara, that's 20,000, right? Him and Tiger G, who was a absolute beast of a heel attraction in Mexico at this time, against Blanco and Dixon, big house there, like a huge crowd. Him and Jeet against Connect and Dr. Wagner, 15,000. Him and Jeet versus Andre the Giant.
Yep.
Who's coming in as an attraction. His first time, by the way, in Mexico. And Mil Máscara.
And also, what a guy they're getting. 1980, Andre the Giant.
Andre is like one of the greatest. I'm sidetracking, but I want to. In 1974, it's his first national tour in America. He's an absolute monster. Like, he is.
Yeah.
If you're talking the greatest attractions ever, that's your guy right there.
Yeah.
Against him and G, Andre and Mil Máscara is 20,000, 5,000 turned away. Okay, I mean, this is huge. Him and G again against Connect and Máscara is 18,000. To his credit, one single match, him and Connect in a hair match, 15,000. That still did a big number. So he wasn't like completely useless by himself. Granted, it's against Connect, and Connect was a big deal. And it just goes on, like Deportes, him and Connect again.
But also like 15,000 of what we just mentioned, of that streak, the low number of that streak. Where he's hitting 20, 20, 80. But it's also, you don't have Mascaras, you don't have Andre. It's a singles match of Connect. It is a gimmick, mask versus hair, but still.
Yeah. And then, but it keeps going, man. I mean, in Deportes, which is, again, huge capacity, him and Connect and Cesar Valentino, who's a very good mid-carder, against Andre and Angel Blanco, 20,000. Cuatro Criminos were back there. Him and Bad News Allen and Paraguayo early in his career at this point, against Darrell Dixon, Cien Caras, and Dos Caras, excuse me. And the original, the older Kobayashi, fantastic wrestler that he was as well. I can't remember his first name. 13,000. Like, if you're just, and this is an important conversation, if you just assess the numbers without context, you don't know the context, you're just going back and you're just looking at the numbers, you're going to be like, hey, wow, this guy is like a
main events, semi-main events, main events with all these other big names, 20,000 sellouts.
Yeah, one of the biggest stars of 1980. He's right up there with the best. No, he wasn't, unfortunately. Right? He's.
I can't think of any contemporary person for that.
Yeah, I mean, the comparison that I made, and it's because he's also back on the ballot this year, is Kane. Right? I mean, outside of 98, Kane is a guy that a lot of voters will describe as a passenger on a fun ride. Right, he's in the same place as Austin and The Rock and Undertaker and all these heavy hitters, and he's like, "Hey, man, I'm just glad I'm on the bus. Right, yeah. I'm glad to be here." And it's very similar to that.
A lot of multi-mans for Kane too.
And you can see here, there's only one singles. It does well. He's the secondary guy there again, and I think in people probably knew who was losing that, to be brutally honest. Connect was not going to lose his mask there, but it still did well. This is a longevity on top here. Absolutely counts towards that. You have to give him more longevity for this. But in terms of him as a draw, I still would say his peak is 1970 against Ray Mendoza. I still think that is your real, hey, great, legitimate. Great.
He is the guy, along with Mendoza, that's bringing these people here in 1980. It's obviously Andre the Giant, Mil Mascaras. I mean, I would also, to a certain degree, say Tiger Jeet Singh.
I would absolutely say Tiger Jeet. I've full disclosure to the listeners. I voted for Tiger Jeet in the past. I've struggled for the last 2 years, so I'm borderline on Jeet. But he came in, and look, there's no doubt they saw him as an absolutely top heel. I don't think he really needed anybody to draw. To be honest, I think you can take away Andre, he will be fine. He's still going to do the big numbers. He was viewed not at the same level as Andre. I think that's disrespectful to Andre, but he was absolutely viewed as like whoever the top heels were in 1980. He was viewed as like he's the guy. So,
and I don't think you mentioned it, but there was also, I don't have the number here, but a quote unquote sellout March 22 of 1980, where he's teaming up with Singh versus Blanco and Tinables, which that was the match that it was a 2 out of 3 falls match. The heels won, Singh and Colosetti won both falls, both of the first 2 falls, and then a riot happened.
Oh God, I think that's the match. I can't remember, but I think Colosetti might have been a substitute in that match. I don't think he was supposed to be in. I can't remember exactly.
That's even more interesting. But it was ultimately a riot broke out. What I'm going to say is maybe due to the heel work there, or something, because the riot broke out. Reported damages upwards of $20,000. So upset a handful of people.
I don't know if the promoters were too happy about the house at the end of when they heard the damage bill. They were like, "Oh well,
there goes the house."
There goes the house. But yeah, I mean, look, Jeet was, and again, like we can sit here and it's not about Tiger Jeet Singh, but like, everyone knows bell to bell, horrendous.
Yeah.
Okay, we know this, but the drawing stuff, you have to give credit where it's due. This guy was the real deal, and look, even in Mexico, go watch him against Inoki in '80. He won. He's terrible. It's not like he's better there. He's not. Let me emphasize, there is nothing there. Nothing at all if you take away the gimmicks. But was he a draw? Did the fans care that he was a terrible wrestler? Not really.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we came to see the show, and the show wasn't necessarily good, but it was enjoyable to a certain degree.
Great entrance. Sword. He looks cool. He's scary. He's a big fucking dude. He's 6'3" or something, right? If you're a kid in the audience, you're probably shitting your pants seeing him. So, you know, he looked the part.
So are you saying that entrances could be considered for a Hall of Fame career?
Oh God, no. No. Immediately, my mind went, "What, Seth Rollins?" No.
I saw that. I just turned the knife just a little bit.
Entrances absolutely help you get a reaction from the audience. We'll leave it there because that's true, right? That's undeniable, that one, including if you're not very good. So yes.
80, but after 80, we're going to 81. It starts slowing down a little bit. I think Dave wrote in the obit that he's still getting big crowds, but that's when he's working Andre. I don't know if it's at this point where he's teaming with Andre or he's still against him in tag capacities, but it's still big crowds, but it's now fewer and far between.
Yeah, I've written literally bits and pieces from 81 to 83.
Yes.
So you still have some big tags, right? Him in Arena Mexico, him and Kanek and Peter Maivia, who, I mean, this is just before he died, I think, Peter Maivia, against Andre and Kobayashi, probably did a big house at Arena Mexico. You've got Nuevo Progreso, him and Wagner and Valentino against Blanco Santo and Solitario, probably did quite well. 82 at Plaza de Toros La Monumental in Monterrey, him and Grand Marcus against Andre and the Texas Ranger. I don't know who that is. Probably did quite well because it's Andre, right? And, in 83, I mean, again, look, Coliseo, Gate record, him and Andre against Dantes, Ferron, Herodes, and MS Uno. They did a lot of these 5 versus 2 matches for Andre, and everybody sort of comedy sells off of him, and you'll find a lot of those matches, some of those matches online. That does a record. Lots of 6-mans at the Coliseo, but it has slowed down pretty dramatically by the time you get to 83. And
there's a singles match with Tony Salazar in Arena Mexico, April 22nd, 1983, which drew 12,000.
Yeah, hair match, I think.
Yes, hair match.
Yes. You've got that one in there as well. I mean, the last big one, 86, probably in Tijuana against Connect, Moss versus Hair, that was a sellout. I don't know what a sellout would have been there, but 8,000 or something, and quite notable.
Yeah.
And then that's basically it, right? And
by the late 80s, he's under the card.
Yeah, I mean, he's in his 50s at this point, so he kept wrestling until, like I said, you can still find cards with him in late 90s, early 2000s. But at this point, very much purely really an undercard guy, indie guy, who kept going. So yeah, that's the case.
There's stuff there. Where, I mean,
Yes.
we here's all the data. Let's sort of review and give our thoughts to that, because there's certainly stuff there. Like you said, that early 70s period, he is undeniably helping draw the house with Ray Mendoza, and he is a draw there. And mid to late 70s, he has a little bit of stuff. Hard to really say. 1980, that the year of 1980 is another big year, but again, a fourth wheeler, and then it starts falling off a little bit. It's it's the sort of there is longevity there. There are these 1, 2, 3 years of like peak, however you want to define 80. There's these peak things, but that peak doesn't last too long, or it's necessarily he is the one that's doing it. He gets longevity overall, but it's not necessarily, when you're looking at like, was he a Hall of Fame draw for 10 years or whatever, 5 years? He's not there. It's a guy that he has drawing capabilities for a number of years, maybe a decade. I guess we could say he is a draw for a decade. Is that fair to say?
I think I can't remember the exact number that I calculated for him, but his longevity on top, when I figured it out, was more than 5 years. Like if you add everything up, it's over 5 years. It's good, objectively. Like, that's not really debatable. It is good. It's not it's not Hall of Fame level, because a lot of it, like I said, is like 6-mans. And when I'm calculating longevity on top, I do not treat a 6-man tag main eventer the same as a single. I just don't think that's fair.
I think
unless it's a unit, right? Yeah. It's an actual team or something.
And obviously, when he goes to the States and everything, we gotta just pull that out. You pull that decade, those 3 years out of the decade.
Yeah, I mean, he's there full time, I think, in the States from 78 to 9. Mm-hmm. There's nothing there. There's nothing there at all. If you were just looking at him in the States, you would not understand really why he's even on a ballot. It's heavy Mexico, Guatemala, maybe somewhere else in South America that we're not familiar with in terms of data. Mm-hmm. But look, longevity on top, factually good. The peak, I would argue, I don't think it's 80 for the peak. I think it's 70. I think if we had a full data set, he would look very impressive there. Because even without all the attendance figures, when you're talking record gates, huge crowds, record gates, and at Arena Mexico and at the Coliseo, that kind of tells you business was up, right? Yeah. I mean, things were going pretty well here. He obviously contributed to that. Mm-hmm. He is, I mean, look, now that I kind of thought about it, business went up in 1970 and he was a main event guy. Business was going up in 1980 in a different promotion. He's one of the top guys twice there. So, okay, that's interesting. I suspect correlationary, but interesting. Mm-hmm. So I look at it, I think great peak. Even at his peak, I don't think he's a top 10 draw, but great peak. Good longevity on top objectively. I split the difference. I think he was a very good draw. Agreed. He was a very good draw. I do think this is the primary strength of the 3 categories for him.
Agreed.
I also think this is why he's on the ballot, because look, when you're writing an obituary, numbers age well. They just do. Numbers are ageless. 10,000 plus is 10,000 plus. And he without context, he looks very, very impressive. We are going to run into this problem as we'll go on in the show, that if his primary credential, his best credential, is being a very good draw, that probably doesn't bode great when it comes to the summary for this case, I would suspect.
And we already talked about his working ability, so let's move on and talk about his historical significance. I mean, again, I would probably say, I don't even remember if we talked about it in this show or before we started recording, but we talked about it. It's just like, this is a guy who's, when I talk about historical significance, I sort of sometimes talk about like the canon of pro wrestling. And obviously this show, The Observer, is a very American forward listenership and readership and all that stuff. But Colosetti is not necessarily a guy that is going to pop off the page when it comes to an American audience. As we said, if anyone watched Southwest Championship Wrestling, they're gonna be like, why is this jobber on the ballot? But when you look at like, how does he fit within the Mexican canon? Yes, sure, massive feud with Mendoza in the 70s. A guy that sets attendance records a couple of different times, several different times. Going back to our good old friend Dr. Lucha, he has books written about him in conjunction with Dorel Dixon, saying that like these are two massive, outside of Mexico stars of Mexico, right? But is that enough? Is that really enough in your estimation to really bode anything for historical significance?
I think for historical,
it feels like that's kind of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, in my notes are light heavyweight champion, the major title, the feud of Rey Mendoza is notable because of Rey Mendoza and who Rey Mendoza is, really.
Rey Mendoza continues to have a historical career.
Yeah, I mean, Mendoza's, I'd have to sit down and calculate this, but you're talking like a top 5 all-time luchador. Yeah. Like, that's the kind of level we're dealing with him. He was part of that early 80s boom period. Mm-hmm. But when you're discussing that historically, if you're a historian who is writing about that period, you're not. How much are you going to write about Coloso Colosetti, right? It would be like, again, I fucking hate doing this all the time because I think Colosetti is a better worker than he was. But are you going to talk primarily about Kane for the Attitude Era? Like, primarily, is that who you're going to talk about? Like,
he will come up as a supporting character.
Yeah, absolutely, he's going to come up. He has to come up, but like, he's not the main guy. And I mean, even Kane, goddamn. I mean, to give credit, his feud of The Undertaker in 98 meant a lot more during that boom period than anything Colosetti was doing in 1980. So it's just, I think his historical significance is above average. And that's it. I mentioned there was a Lucha World magazine in 1993. One of the authors, this is not like a comprehensive list, it's just what the author felt, wrote about what he considered to be the top 100 luchadors of all time. And Coloso Colosetti was 64th on that list. For context, he is the lowest placed ballot candidate on that list who had already seen most of his career. He was still wrestling sparingly on the indies, but he was basically done. The people below him were still adding to their cases. Cien Caras, Conan, etc., etc. So to be on that list means you meant something, right? I mean, to be considered top 100 for Lucha, even in 1993, it has value. But to say it's like good, or this is somebody who's really worth studying, which is what I think of when I think of historical significance. Do you want to study them? Do you want to research them? And I'm talking like bibliographies and references and really dive into them. There's just, what are you studying here? There's just not enough. He's somebody you talk about when studying other aspects of wrestling. He's not the primary conversation.
Yeah, no, I pretty much totally agree. I was looking to see if that magazine had a writer attached, and I couldn't find the magazine, but the link to the article about it will be obviously in the show notes below. It's the sort of, is there going to be more research on the guy outside of this show? Like, you know what I mean? Like outside of a context of like the Hall of Fame, it's that, and I'm not saying that in any sort of negative way, or pushing this podcast up in any real way, but it's like, there is some research and whatnot, and there's obviously some people have talked about him, especially when he passed away. There was a lot, the obit from Dave, and a lot of people coming from Mexico posting on Facebook talking about their memories of Colosetti. But it is a guy that's like, I kind of think it's just, he is a name, he has some significance to him, but it is, I think, above average is right. He's not a replacement level guy really anyway. He is a guy that's present. He is an upper mid card sort of guy to a degree, like a Kane, where you can see him in these sort of things. There's not going to be a lot discussed, I think, about Colosetti, and it's sort of the passing is what makes people re-examine him.
Yeah, and as we said earlier, when somebody like this passes away and you see numbers and they're big numbers, that makes you take a step back and go, okay,
is there something here?
is there something here? But once you dive into the context as we're doing at the moment, you realize there is something. It's not as impressive as it looks on the face of it. In terms of researching him, I will say I've got it somewhere in my bookmarks, but I can't find it at the moment. On the Wrestling Classics forum, there is a thread from Ronald Grosswitz, who's an Austrian researcher. It is a South America archive. He is going through all the South American newspapers and finding as many results as he can to post. It's incredible. This would be Coloso Colossetti's chance in future if we can find something indicating that outside of Mexico, outside of Guatemala, he also did something, I don't know, in Argentina or whatever. Okay, now we might have something. But without that new research, the case as it is, and we talked about this off air, to me, is there enough there to maybe put him on a ballot? Sure. Or I'm not offended by this. He's not Booker T.
No.
Right? I'm not offended by it.
No.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
he's not Chris Stratus, right? He's not Nikki Bell. I'm not offended.
No, and we say the Kane comparison, but I think there's also like, and I think like when you look at like someone like Kane, there's a group of people that obviously look at Kane, they're like, "F no, get out of here, buddy!" Like hit the road. I'm trying to think of like a good comparison, like in terms of like recent modern U.S. Canada people, like Drew McIntyre a little bit, where it's like, he's a guy, he's a good enough worker, but like, and he has stuff, he pops up here and there, but there's not really a whole lot there. I'm trying to think of anyone else that fits that bill.
I mean, to be fair, I did rank Kane at the same level, at the same tier as Colosetti, because look, Kane, the drawing record again, and it's deceptive, but like it's very like he does great in drawing. The problem is when he gets the ability, and then if you take the Observer Award seriously, he's going to have another problem in historical significance at that point. I mean, that's where you run into some very serious problems with Kane. The other one, and that's a different case. I've got Hall and Nash, the outsiders, at the same tier, but it's a different case. Yeah. Triple A Lapaka, kind of. Lapaka's a much stronger draw. He's like a consistent headliner for a longer period. I mean, he's a much bigger draw. But I would argue for ability, he's worse, to be honest. For historical significance,
worse than Colosetti.
Yes. And for historical significance, that's a very mixed bag, because the reality is it's a secondary version.
Yeah.
When he feuded with LA Park, he got exposed. I mean, that was just the reality of what happened there. So, like you can get him, and Dave thought about this, right? I mean, there's a reason he wasn't on last year, but I think Dave sat down and really thought about is there enough there? I think he's fine on the ballot. Like I said, he's not offensive.
Agreed. This is a sort of question I would love to ask Dave, is the sort of idea of like, there's obviously a threshold for it, obviously for all voters, of what counts as a Hall of Famer. What is that threshold for Dave of what counts as a nominee, as what counts as someone that goes onto the ballot? Because what is the aspect of Colosetti? Because Colosetti is the guy to me where it's like, I could totally see this guy being on the ballot. I could also see this guy not being on the ballot. He is like the line of making the ballot. And to that, for a guy like Colosetti, to me, that's pretty great. That's pretty significant for him. But it's like, I do not see him as a Hall of Famer. I see him like at that line.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, Ryan, I rank all the candidates, right? And I give them scores, and I try and figure out.
We're nerds. I get it.
Yeah. And I always use the star rating comparison because it's a language everybody understands, right?
Well,
and even my system.
Well, lately.
Well, agrees with, and that's a different story. But
you add curves, right? You add curves to your.
Look, occasionally I will have a candidate who's above 5 stars, right? I mean, I have some of those too. So, and in my head, I think of a 3-star candidate. I think you're good. If I see a 3-star match, I'm like, hey, that was a good match. That was good.
Yeah, agreed.
That is what Colosetti is, right? He's good. You can get him on a ballot. Any below that, for me personally, if you are below 3, you do not belong here.
Yes.
For Dave specifically, and again, this is just my opinion. This is not an aspect of the Hall of Fame I've talked about with Dave. There does seem to be a little bit of variance section to section in terms of what he's willing to tolerate. You can't sell me on Nikki Bella. Another project that I'm working on, okay, is the GWE 2.0, right? Which is a variation of what's already existing. And I was thinking, okay, could we do this with the Observer Hall of Fame candidates and everybody who's ever been on an Observer Hall of Fame ballot and the most outstanding rankings and blah, blah, blah. Like, how can we do this a little not better, just differently, right? With different voters.
Yeah.
I have to put Nikki Bella there as a nominee because of Dave. Okay, I have to. I have no choice. She was on the ballot. Okay, he's put me in that position. I have to put, even Trish, look, there's no Trish Stratus in these other sections. And I grew up as a Trish fan. Okay, I grew up as a straight teenager in the Attitude Era. I was a Trish fan, trust me.
I know a lot of guys grew up as a Trish fan.
Yeah, that shirt that she sells, Your First Crush, not necessarily a lie. Okay, that's pretty true. Okay, so but for the ballot, how would you, in your head, if you're thinking of a good candidate to go on about, how could you get there with Trish?
We talked about this a little bit about in the Booker T episode. What has changed in his career to that in my opinion, and in the discussion of the episode, what has changed in Booker T's career since being on the ballot last time? I think it was like 2005 to warrant him going back on the ballot. It's his TNA run and his commentary run. And I'm like, I think that's worse. I think that hurts him more. What are we doing?
I think that the announcing run hurts him.
It's awful.
If anything, I would have been like in 2011, I think was the first time he was on the ballot. Yeah, back then I would have been like, oh yeah, okay, let's get him on the ballot. Now I think the case is weaker. But here's the thing. With Booker T, this is just a fact. There are a lot of wrestlers, present and past, who really like Booker T. Yes. He's tremendously well respected. I absolutely can see them saying to Dave, look, give this guy another chance. Kane's very similar. If you put Kane on the ballot once, I'm not even arguing. I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. We'll consider it once.
Yeah.
Twice. And there's other ones like I like Kyoko Inoue. Okay, I think Kyoko Inoue is a higher level of candidate than the people we've just discussed. I think she's a great wrestler. Her drawing is going to be above average because she was on top in a boom period. She has good historical value because of that. But she got eliminated in 2021. Why? Like, is Dave like a hardcore Kyoko Inoue supporter, and we have to revisit this in five years later because we've egregious? Like, is he? I don't understand some of these, not all of them. Again, I don't. Of the candidates on the ballot, and we have 83 returning, 14 new, so that's 97 candidates on the ballot this upcoming year. Taking into account, Dave might add a few last-minute ones as well. Those 90,
has there been big non-Hall of Fame deaths this year? I'm trying to think. I don't think there has.
Or anyone who's really improved their case that's not on here?
That too. I don't think so.
I'm trying to think of like the big hitters because I mean, he's not going to put Darby Allin on just because of 6 months.
No.
He wasn't into Hangman Page last year. He's not going to be now because he's not doing anything. In WWE,
no, I mean everyone that's on the top is already in.
And plus we've got 97 candidates.
Except for Seth, I guess. But
well,
but
of the 97 candidates, this is my original point. The ones I would not put on the ballot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The disagreement between me and Dave on ballot worthy is minimal. It's literally less than 10%, and I'm like, no. Yeah. So I don't want it to sound like I disagree with Dave and everything. No, it's minimal, but like it.
But that 10% could easily be another. I don't know who this person is, but another person's 10% of this. These people should be on the ballot. These people should be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, but I don't know who these people are, but
I took that into consideration, right? I used Dave's own. My rule on star ratings for matches is if you're within half a star of me, there's nothing to argue about. Okay, it's half a fucking star. That's not okay. Yeah. Even taking that into account, there are three. There are 3 people who fall outside of that range. 2 of them fall outside of it by 3/4 of a star. So okay, let's stretch it out. Let's include them as well. Mm-hmm. Trish Stratus falls out by 1 star and 3/4. You have to know something incredibly important to her case that I apparently don't know. It's got to be unbelievable. She gave birth to all of the horsewomen, and we just never found out about it. God knows how that would even work. It's got to be something incredible to justify this one. And, you know, so at that point, it's actually one candidate. And again, it sounds like we always have a go at Trish. Me, not just me and you, but like
we.
Joe Lanza and Rich. So we always end up picking on it. We don't mean to, right? We want to talk about great candidates. I mean, one of the great things about this show is being able to explore new quality candidates, learning about them, and realizing that wrestling's a lot bigger than you think it is, right? And understanding the different types of value that different wrestlers can bring to the table. So when we get candidates that are bad, we groan. We go, I've just spent a week researching this person, and it's really a bit of a waste of my time.
I think there's 10 people we have discussed on this season, or will be 10 with the next episode being Tibor. 5 of which I would say are people that most people have no idea who they are. You're coming in learning a bunch. Even then that can maybe stretch if like you're not familiar with like Joshi wrestling of like Tam Nakano or something. But like for the most part, Petite Prince, I would say Espantos, I would say Lambrakis, obviously, Colosetti, Tibor. These are, for the most part, I would say a majority of wrestling fans don't know who these people are. You're gonna learn, but like then you go back to the people that we, modern US and Canada, where you kind of to a certain degree, again, because this show is American viewership, listenership, not necessarily forward, but just by the nature of being an English speaking podcast. The Observer being obviously an American newsletter, like these sort of people sort of innately know these careers. People know who Trish Stratus is. She is a name. She has name value. So Dave's like, okay, maybe there's something, like, again, the question of like, what is the threshold for someone like, Trish? Is it just that like, it's a name, people know who Trish Stratus for the most part, I would say is.
It does. And we've had other ones, not just Sid.
Mm-hmm.
So if you actually assess Sid's case and go into detail on it, he's a terrible candidate. He's really bad. Like outside of longevity on top, there's nothing there. There's no ability. The peak drawing, he's a top guy every time business is down. Like there's really nothing there. Bray Wyatt is another one.
I was just about to bring him up.
Like Dave's, his standard for modern specifically appears to be just a little more lenient than for every other section. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. And I don't want to speculate like he's biased. But then again, every year we always talk about how great modern. He always thinks modern's really strong. If I'm invited to Observer Radio, if he says that this year, I will counter that. Because we've inducted like 3 Hall of. It's not always going to be strong. You're going to have some bad years.
It's also like you have Rest of the World sitting right there.
Like a non-wrestler, which looks really good.
Yes, that's true.
Even Japan, which the one thing Japan was missing in previous years was that one person at the top who's like, oh yeah, that's a no-brainer. It has that this year. Mm-hmm. So like that section's actually fascinating and really interesting. Lots of candidates that you can really dig into. And modern, if you just look at the top end, it's pretty interesting. But if you look at the anchors, you go, ooh, that's a bit of a drag there. And again, I don't know. They would have to answer. I mean, he's probably going to deny it. I presume. I don't think he's going to admit the modern standards low, but I don't understand it.
I feel like that's a good wrap up for Colosetti to a certain degree. So let's move into the Mexican region for the Hall of Fame. I know you have it in front of you, but I'm going to put this up here for us. So the Mexican region this year is 9 acts, which means you get 3 votes in the region. Darrell Dixon and did someone else go in? Who else went in? Someone else went in last year. Or am I thinking
Hamada.
Yes, Hamada. And no one dropped off, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And they were massive vote getters. So that makes Mexico a little bit interesting this year. 9 acts, 3 votes. The highest being 31.9% with Sangre Chicana. Very interesting. A lot of votes up for grabs. But again, your 9 acts, Sangre Chicana, Mascarita Sangrada, Volador Jr., Anja Blanca and Dr. Wagner, El Dandy, Triple A's La Parca, El Hijo del Santo and Octagon, Los Espantos, and Coloso Colosetti. Ethan, you have 3 votes. Who are you thinking about for Mexico?
My two guaranteed votes, as the same as previous years, would be Sangre Chicana and the tag team of La Blanca. So Blanco and Wagner as a team. Third one is open. I'm currently, as we're doing this show, sort of knee deep on some Los Espantos, Los Hermanos in Espanto drawing data. It feels a little flimsy, but we'll see where it leads me. They're mostly a historical significance case anyway. Chicana, I feel like both of these are kind of. Would I put them top 10 on the entire ballot for wrestling side? Hold on.
You're talking about Chicana and Blanco and Wagner?
Yeah, both of them. Yeah, I would. I would have both of these as top 10 candidates on the wrestling side of the ballot because Chicana's wildly underrated to me. This is a guy from late 78 through to early 86 who was just a fantastic draw. He has plenty of 10,000 plus numbers. The shows that he headlines where we don't have the numbers, they're sellouts. And if we had more data, which is a problem with Mexico, granted, he would look like kind of a no-brainer, I think, for drawing. There are shows like Arena Mexico repeatedly that do sellouts when he's returning after time off. Like, that should probably tell you something about who this guy is. He was the top babyface, and technically Rudo, for CMLL, where he gets punished a little bit, and some of the top guys in AEW could probably sympathize with this. CMLL during this time is the secondary promotion. But just because they're the secondary promotion, that doesn't mean they're doing terrible business.
Correct.
He's still got big numbers all over the place for years. It's not like they're stinking into the wall. Like, that's not what's happening here. So he's a great draw for 8 years. Peaks absolutely at Hall of Fame level. I couldn't tell you how many years because of the lack of data. Great worker. I mean, his match against MS Uno, which is a very famous match for the hardcore wrestling fans that I've seen, I think in '83. It's brilliant. It's one of the greatest lucha matches I've ever seen. It's a bloody war. His selling reminds me of Ricky Steamboat, which is the biggest compliment I could possibly give a wrestler. Ricky Steamboat's one of the great ones. So he's this guy, and the reports back it up. He was a great wrestler for 8 years. And then, whether he got beat up or broken down or he had personal issues, whatever it was, 86, there's a huge downturn in ability. He's not terrible, but he's just there. And then even in the late 90s, early 2000s for AAA, he's main eventing a bunch of six-man tags for them and stuff. Great draw, great worker. Hall of Fame tier peak as a draw. To me, he's more than strong enough to get it.
Yeah.
La Blanca is one of the top 5 tag teams in lucha history. 2/3 of one of the top 5 trios in lucha history with El Solitario. The reports on them, again, those of Match of the Nights and Match of the Weeks and awards and Best Tag Team of the Year, in their prime, these guys were good. And they're drawing, I think they have at least 2 of the top 10 attendance figures that we're aware of the 60s. Even when they team together, for the record, their full-time team from 1966 to 1974, they reunite in 78, 79. They draw again. And the part that we're not supposed to take into account, even though logically in this case we probably should, when they split and feud with each other, they draw big money twice. When Blanco turns Rudo and it happens, they draw big money. When Wagner turns Rudo and it happens, they draw big money again. These guys were great draws, very good historical value, good workers. And I'm very happy when I posted, I can't remember off the top of my head what the numbers were, but the longevity on top data for them and comparing them to Los Infernales, who got knocked off the ballot last year, and how just vastly superior they were. I think that played a part in getting Dave to vote for them, which I was delighted about because he was not a fan of this team 3 years ago. I know that. So now he was like, oh, actually, maybe. So those 2 are my yeses.
And lest we forget, Colosetti was there during all of it.
He was there. He was there, Ryan. It's better than not being there,
He does a couple headlining Arena Mexicos during the year, during one of their years of feuding.
He was tagging with Angel Blanco pretty frequently when they feuded with Los Diablos in 1974 and 75.
Does he get downfall points at all? Does he get downstream?
Well,
He's there.
it's something. He was there. And once you get past those two, I think there's a very steep drop off. For the record, these two I've labeled as 4.5 star candidates, which is basically Hall of Fame level.
Yeah.
And then I've gone down to 3.75. So that's a big drop.
Who's in that 3 3/4? Who's in that 3.5, 3 3/4 range?
Voldo Jr. and El Dandy. El Dandy, look, I think he's a Hall of Fame worker. He's incredible from the mid 80s to the early 90s. Like, if people go dig up, heavily influenced by Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask, and he's crazy, dude. Like, he's mid 80s, like, he's doing these tope suicidas over the top rope, and he's landing at an angle, like head first, going down into the floor. He is nuts. Okay, I don't know why he's doing this, but it's crazy when I see it. I was like, oh my God, he's trying to kill himself. He stopped doing it eventually. So I'm presuming he realized, okay, yeah, this is probably a bad idea. Great flyer, great technical wrestler. He's fantastic. But outside of that in-ring category, there really isn't much there. Like, for drawing, he's on top when CMLL is going down. Like, early 90s and stuff, CMLL is doing pretty badly. You know, the women liked him, but it wasn't like, I don't know. For drawing, there's very, very, very little here. Historical significance is going to be tied to the ability category. How highly do you rate him? And
yeah,
you know, it's tough. But he's almost a pure in-ring candidate, and in that situation, it's very, very difficult unless 60% of the voters, similar to Ishii, who, granted, before Joe Lanza has a go at me, has a little bit of drawing credit. I know that, but like, when you're heavily in one category, you need 60% consensus. You need 60% of the voters to personally believe that you are one of the great, great wrestlers. And that's a very high bar. Ties into Voldo Jr., who in the ring, I just can't. He's probably underrated as a draw. He headlines, I think, a lot more than people think in front of big audiences. Very, very, very good draw if you look at how much he headlines. In the ring, I've always thought he was really, really good. But I could never get to the point where I thought he was great. I don't know. I don't know. That maybe it's just a me problem. I just don't see him at that level. And if you don't see him at that level, and I'm not saying you have to think he's one of the great ones, but if you don't see him as like a top 20, 25 wrestler in his era, this case ends up where I've ranked it. You know, very good, ballot worthy, but would I vote for you? Probably not. Probably not. Below him, I've got Mascarita Sagrada, who's my 3.5. He needs a deep dive.
I love Mascarita Sagrada.
Yeah, I mean, great worker, obviously. Yeah. Great worker, did headline a little bit, but where he needs a deep dive is when you're trying to sort of picture where he places in the history of minis.
Yes.
And I've said this to Rob Viper, who loves this case. We need to. The minis certainly in the 60s and the 70s, people need to understand they were touring attractions and they were comedy figures, yes.
Yep.
But they were main eventers. In Europe, they're main eventing all the time. When they're in Britain, they are main event attractions. In France, they're main event attractions. In Italy, they're main event attractions. So, from a drawing perspective, I do not think Mascarita Sagrada is going to end up at the top of that list for the minis. From an ability perspective, he might, because those guys were really just doing comedy for the most part.
Yeah. Even
if they may have been, very talented, it didn't really matter. They were just booked into comedy roles because that's what people wanted to see and they wanted to laugh at them, unfortunately. So with him, historical significance is very good. It could be higher, but we need somebody really needs to just dig into the minis history and figure out where Mascarita Sagrada's place is within that. I know I'm asking for a lot there. This is obviously a very extensive project. It's not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
But that's what he needs. And then you have the other three, right? You've got Coloso Colosetti, who we've discussed. You've got Triple A La Parka. You've got Santo and Octagon. I'm not voting for any of these three.
Mm-hmm.
Ballot worthy, yes. Anything more, no. Those three are Los Espantos, I'm still working through. I suspect might fall somewhere in that Dandy Volador Jr. range. I feel like Ballot worthy, yes. Vote worthy.
I mean, I've already done an episode about them. We'll talk about them a little bit. That sounds like that's where they would fall for you.
Because their historical significance is excellent. And again, look, Dave has not clarified officially if this is the tag team version or the trio version, for the record.
Mm-hmm.
The tag team, his historical significance is their bag. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
As a tag team, they're top 10 all time. They're good. As a trio, they're top 5 all time. This is the beginning of real trios. These 3 guys had the same gimmick. The only thing that differentiated them is basically numerals, right?
Yep.
I mean, if you think of Vianos, this is your Vianos precursor right here.
Yep.
So same gimmick, proper trios, headliners, for CMLL, and obviously had an impact. I mean, this is the precursor certainly to Blanco and Wagner, both as a tag team and in the trios, and then everything else that comes afterwards, especially in the boom in the 80s for trios. So for historical significance, they're fucking great. I mean, you could argue they're Hall of Fame level right there for this category.
Mm-hmm.
But in the other categories, and again, I'm still working through this, so subject to change of some of my opinions on this, but for drawing, it's a very short period of time for both the team and the trio. You look at the trio, even if you attach a little bit of a premium to it's actually around 2 years, a little bit under 2 years total longevity on top. Very good peak, but not a great peak. If you attach a premium to them, which I do, because judging, when I say a premium, expecting the same longevity on top from a team that you get from a singles wrestler is stupid. Okay? Objectively, it's just no. Promoters don't want to pay 2 guys if they can afford to pay 1. Okay? So you've got to, the only tag teams who've been on top for 10 years, in America, I don't think there's one, to be brutally honest with you. In Japan, it's Barber and Saruda, and Inoki and Sakaguchi. That's it. That's your whopping list of top 10. So you can't have the same standard. I think you have to apply you've got to be a little lenient. So for me, but it's still not going to be good enough. All that wind is like for these guys. Okay, you go from 2 years. It's the equivalent to maybe 3 years if they were a singles wrestler. It's still not very good. It's very, very lacking. Ability, again, I'm studying this.
All right, hold on. Real quickly on the drawing. Where do you sort of see, I mean, you're still doing the research, but where do you sort of see the idea of, it's mostly Mexico, I imagine. I don't know about other regions, maybe modern US and Canada or something. The sort of idea where the Espantos team are sort of feuding with El Santo, and then all builds up to a singles match with El Santo versus Espanto 1, which is like the only footage of any Espanto that we have, and it's from a Santo movie. But like the idea that like he is, because if I recall correctly, he has a match of Espanto 2 that then leads into the mask versus mask match of Espanto 1. So it's like this idea of he's feuding with all of them, and then leads to a singles.
They have actually quite a long history, which again, for people who think old school booking, they did the matches. Mexico's booking was pretty creative. So what essentially happened was that Espanto 1, Uno, used to team as a Rudo with El Santo.
Correct.
And then 2 was there too. And, they would team as trios and stuff.
Yep.
When they were getting ready in 62 to get 3 involved, that's when they turned on El Santo. That turns him Technico. Obviously, that's an incredibly pivotal moment in Lucha history. Although, again, for the fans loved him anyway. I mean, this is a very easy turn.
It was coming. Like, the turn was coming.
For like a decade.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, he was a monster draw, obviously, he's El Santo. But that's when they turn on him, and that leads to the feud with the Espantos. And obviously, the big mask versus mask match, El Santo and Espanto won. One of the biggest houses that we know of in the 60s. I think 18,000 thousands turned away. Standing room only, etc. Like big house. I would love to take that into account, but Dave is blunt about this, man. Like I fucking hate it, but like Dave's. Well, look, the example he was asked about Toyota and Yamada, and this is not the same level, but he was asked specifically that, okay, when Toyota and Yamada had matches against each other, while, basically in between being a tag team, do we count that as part of the case? And he was pretty blunt. He was like, no, that they're working singles. No, it doesn't count as part of the case. Okay. In that situation, I can understand it, because the single stuff was really kind of like, it wasn't part really of the tag team lore at all. Like, it was kind of its own thing.
And also, working as a tag and working as singles is very different.
Yeah.
Even if you're against each other.
But in this case, and Blanco and Wagner have the same problem, where they are a team, they split and they feud with each other. The lore is tied to them being a team. Then they come back together and they split, and the other guy turns, which again is part of the lore of what happened earlier. Well, the single stuff doesn't count as part of the team's case. And it's like, man, that's...
I disagree with it personally.
I mean, logically, you can't make that work, if I'm being honest. Like, that's very illogical. And look, I love Dave, but Dave Meltzer versus Logic, I'm going to take Logic. I just am. So that's where I'm like, I don't know about that. And going back to Los Hermanos Espanto, now, okay, you can... It's not really...
Team never breaks up. They're feuding with El Santo.
The turn happens specifically with the tag team, right? It's 1 and 2. 3's not there yet.
Yes, I believe two is the one. He said in a newspaper that he ordered Santo to start and he didn't, and then he slapped Santo slapped Espanto too, and then Espanto then attacked Santo.
Yes. And by the way, 2, from what I can tell so far, is probably the best worker of the 3, which some people might be surprised about. He sounds like he's pretty good. But yeah, so the tag team is a part of this El Santo turn.
Yes.
Okay. So this is where it's going to get fucking complicated.
Yeah.
So, but the singles match, the big one is El Santo versus Espanto 1. It is a singles match.
Correct.
The feud isn't really with just Espanto 1. It's with the tag team, but because it's a singles match, do we need to separate it? It's the Kerry Von Erich problem when you're assessing the Von Erichs, right? Where it's like, okay, but okay, Kerry versus Michael Hayes in a single is obviously a part of the Von Erichs Freebirds feud. Surely it should count as part of the Von Erichs case. Okay, but should Kerry facing Ric Flair for the title count as part of the case, considering it's really built on the back of David's death, and Dave, and it's part of the... See, that's where, for me, that's too much.
Yeah.
Right. That's when you're like, I get what you're saying. That's going a little far there, right? We have to dial it back. But then here you could... So could you argue that, okay, the El Santo turn is part of the tag team's history? Is it part of the trio's history, considering 3's not involved?
Yeah, when does 3 come in?
September 62.
Yes.
Which is months later.
No, I believe November 62.
No, I think...
I'm looking at November 13th, 1962.
I think the first records I have of him being involved in the matches is like very late September. I can find you the Lucha DP site if you want me to.
It's possible that... I mean, it doesn't matter. We can move forward.
It's afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Regardless, it's afterwards. So, okay, should he get credit for my reading on this? And again, I'm trying to piece this together because
you're in the midst of the research.
Yes, and I'm trying to make Dave's opinion, which I obviously value, be rational. Okay, I'm trying to make those two things true. Sometimes I can't. I try my best. I think if it's 2 of the 3, it counts. Freebirds rule, right? They're not always teaming together as a trio.
Freebirds rule. I like that. That fired a nerd on in my brain.
Freebirds rule, baby. Midnight Express, right? It's not Bobby Eaton, Stan Lane, and Dennis Condrey all the time. It's actually never those 3 combinations. It's 2 of the 3, right? So, okay. The tag team stuff can count as part of the trio's case. I don't think the single stuff can. And as a result of that, Santo versus Espanto 1, I don't think is going to end up counting. I know, I can see the frustration.
A heartbreak.
I know, but like I'm trying.
No, but I get it. Like if you're looking at this as a 3-person team, you're saying that like you can maybe argue that as tag teams as a thing, that makes sense. That happens. Freebirds rule. You get a lot of more tag matches than trios matches. Less so in Mexico, but historically. But you're doing 2 steps removed now to a singles match with one wrestler. I get what your argument. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, and we don't really do that, right? Like even with like Los Brazos, I can't remember any focus on them as their singles matches, and they had a bunch of them that were good. Like it, I don't remember that. I don't remember I didn't vote for Los Hermanos Dinamita, but I don't think people were considering their individual. Even though that's basically the same thing. They're a trio, and yeah, it was a singles fuse for each of them, but like they were still a team. They would still gang up and attack. I mean, it's very similar to the El Santo thing. Like Espanto 1 might be taking on El Santo. I guarantee you, underneath the card, his brothers are in a tag team match or something. And like, again, similar to the Von Erichs, where that happened all the time. Like Kerry would be in the main events, the brothers would be doing something else with the other Freebirds, but it's part of the same thing. And it's difficult. I will say, looking, because I've spent days just assessing the drawing comparisons, there is linear correlations. So when you're comparing Espanto 1, the tag team of 1 and 2, and the trio 1, 2, and 3, for drawings power specifically, 1 is the strongest, the tag team is second, the trio is third.
Yes.
Because again, for the trio, yes, the tag team stuff counts as part of the trio, but you can't give them full credit. It's basically 2/3 credit. For historical significance, it's the exact opposite. The trio is the most valuable, the tag is second, Espanto 1 is like the El Santo stuff is great, but it's not just him, it's third.
Yeah.
So in terms of when I'm trying to decide like who has the best case, who should be here, my view still leans trio, because the peak accomplishment, what gets this team closest to being a Hall of Famer, is historical significance. And that this team, everything they mean in terms of legacy, it's not just the El Santo stuff. Everything they start, you can make a real argument they're Hall of Fame level just for historical significance, even if they're lacking in the other 2 categories, or lacking within context of what we want for a Hall of Famer. So, yeah, it's complicated.
2 things I want to say in case people are wondering. I think Ethan would agree. Working ability is then probably, I was going to say individuals. It's probably Espanto 2, then 1, then 3.
3 is third.
3 is 3 is he's too new, too young.
He's just a guy. Like there's no reports of him being terrible or good. He's a guy.
He's a guy. It's tag and trios. I'm not entirely sure.
2 and 1 is tough based on the stuff, because 2 is the one that gets like, hey, good, had a good match here, had a good match there, etc.
Espanto 2, I referenced it before, a magazine article where he interviewed him. He said that one of the proudest moments of his career was when Lou Thez told reporters that Espanto 2 had great qualities and a good wrestling base. I was like, that's pretty good rec. That's a pretty good rec from Lou Thez.
He was part of a tag match. This is interesting because this wasn't with the other Espantos. There's a 1970 October tag match in Monterrey, and he's teaming with Dr. Wagner against El Cabade and Carlos Lagarde. It is called one of the greatest matches ever seen in Monterrey.
Yeah.
And that's him isolated from again, it's a tag, but he's isolated from there. I have a funny feeling if you're looking at technical ability, this is the superior Espanto.
Yes.
1 was a brawler. 1 is a classic Rudo. Brawler, lots of blood. Love blood. Blood was all part of his feuds. That's the thing.
What ends up happening with Espantos being like, one's a brawler. It's like, oh yeah.
One of the stories that I pray to God is not true. When he's feuding with Darrell Dixon in, I think it's 1963. No, 4. When Dixon, and he beats him in a hair match, which was like a big shock back then because Dixon was a big star, but he busts him open. And then a few weeks later, Dixon is supposed to appear in Rio, Mexico against him in a tag. He doesn't show up because he had contracted hepatitis.
The old Nigel McGuinness?
Now, I don't know if these 2 things are connected, but if they are, that's quite concerning. That's not great, if I'm being honest. I don't know if that's kayfabe, and then just, oh yeah, he's a dirty Rudo. And
Yeah.
That's real.
He put mud in his fists, you know, as he's breaking
fighting him and busting him open, and he bit him apparently. But yeah,
the other second thing I want to say is that what this also makes me sort of revisiting the episode to a degree, but we'll talk about everyone else pretty quickly soon. The other thing that's so fascinating about Espantos is like there's such a massive what if to me. You know, they were moments away from going into Japan and doing a Japan tour. I believe they would have been the first, like, or one of the early Mexican, at least teams, or maybe just Mexican groups over in Japan. And then at that moment during that period, that's also, by the way, also where we would have gotten a lot more footage of them as well, you know, down the line. So that's just like, it's such a massive what if of like what that would have happened, because then that would have exposed them to the Japanese audience, which in turn would have helped expose them to a US audience. So it's just this thing of like what would have happened if they actually were able to make that tour.
I mean, obviously for the listeners,
assumingly obviously do well.
Yeah, and for the listeners unaware, in 1968, Espanto I passed away. He was killed, I think, by the bar. There was a fight at a bar or something, and I think he was killed.
Yes, he was.
He was 35, very much still in the prime of his career. I mean, that's another big what if. You know, if he was still alive, even as a single, would we be looking at him potentially being on the ballot? And you know, how does that case look? As a team, I will say, if you look at like 67, 68, they were starting to fade. I think the problem here was that the Ola Blanca basically replaced them.
Yes.
They came along in 66. There was an absolute direct correlation in them headlining and this team not headlining.
Yes.
They had already been displaced. That probably would have affected things. But Espanto I's death was obviously devastating. The other two was just like, man. I mean, especially two. I think two was deeply affected by that.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's the guy, when you talk about going to Japan, he's the guy that I think would have benefited the most.
Espanto 2 was offered to still make the tour, and he said,
yeah.
I can't. I cannot do it.
Yeah. Even if they weren't like real brothers or whatever. I mean, they pretended they were. Even when they lost their mask, they would have fake surnames and everything else.
Exactly.
But like, you know, it's tough. It's tough, man. If you're best buddies with somebody and you ride with them and you grew up in the same neighborhood with them and all this kind of stuff, and then they die. Yeah. You know, I can understand that affecting them.
Let's go through, and maybe we'll go through a little quicker just for time. But even though I know you and I can both talk about this for a long time,
yeah,
that's like a bonus episode or something down the line. Let's go through and just talk about sort of the wrestlers that we've discussed this season. Just for clarity, folks, this was intended for me to be like the last episode of the season, talking about Coloso Colosetti, and then, you know, talking about and sort of reviewing the rest of the season with Ethan, because Ethan is somebody that I can like just go through everything. I know for a fact he's been researching these guys. He's been, I guess, publishing his findings on the VOW Discord there. So I know that like he's been doing the research and all that jazz. So, but you know, just for scheduling sakes, for various different reasons, it came out before the last episode of Tibor Zakash next month, or next however many weeks or whatever. So we're just going to go through and quickly I want to hear your thoughts about these newbies. I'll go through just the ones we sort of talked about. I'll throw in also, just because we haven't talked about in the season, you know, some of the people that are returning that we didn't discuss. But I'll just go through when we have discussed them. So I'll start off with another person I know you haven't really done a lot of research on, but we'll start off who was our first person in January, Tam Nakano.
Tam's interesting. I nominated Tam to be on the ballot this year. Very gut instinct feel right now. This is the final deep dive that I'm going to do. Hopefully next week if I have time on my trip, if I don't, the following week. My gut says good draw, very good worker, good historical significance. That's kind of what I'm looking at. Ballot worthy for sure. Vote worthy, I don't see it right now. Again, if I do a deep dive and there's more there, like for work, there is going to be a limitation for longevity there. There just is. I know that actually. I know enough about her career. I've seen her enough to see that. So ballot worthy, yes. More than that, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm sort of agreeing. And sort of the conclusions we came there with my guest, Scotty Edwards, was just sort of like, if she comes back, that will be great for her case. Because right now, as it stands, it's like it's not necessarily enough.
It's longevity.
It's longevity. It's what, 10 years, I think, exactly. So it's longevity. La Petite Prince. Sorry. My apologies to Phil Lyons. La Petite Prince.
Hall of Fame worker. Absolutely a phenomenal wrestler. In real time, he was recognized like that. It's not just us retrospectively saying it decades later.
A baffling worker to me. I said in the show, baffled at how he invented this. Basically, he invented what he's doing. Basically,
yeah, he kind of lives in his own bubble, which is extremely rare for a wrestler. He wasn't apparently influenced by anything. He just came from a gymnastics background, just incorporated it into it. He didn't influence anyone, as far as we can tell. That's notable, or
I will say, like, that episode when we released, we got a lot of good feedback. A lot of people tweeted about it. Oh God, I'm blanking on his name. I was just about to say it. Guy that does a bunch of the research. He watches a lot of Petite Prince. I'm gonna look this up. He's in AEW Ring of Honor right now. Jordan Oliver is a big fan and a guy that watches a lot of Le Petit Prince. And I was like, really? Really about that one?
I mean, I've heard that Rob Viper said there's a lot of luchadors, apparently young luchadors that are watching.
Yeah, Rob Viper, I believe, did a thread as well about Prince.
But like, we need specifics in terms of who, right? Like, because the problem with him is, number one, you're talking about influence half a century later.
Yep,
that's problematic. Because it's just, like, in real time, if you didn't really mean much, that's gonna hurt. It just is. And secondly, who you influence matters. If you're just influencing, and I'm not saying this to Jordan Oliver, I'm just general statement. If you're just influencing a bunch of indie wrestlers who do nothing with their careers, I don't care. Like that, so what? That means nothing. But if you're influencing, the next AEW main eventers or whoever, okay,
someone that wrestles similarly, if you're influencing like a Will Ospreay type,
yes. Right, and I'll pay attention now. Okay, that's notable. So yeah, his problem, absolutely ballot worthy. I probably will never vote for him, to be honest, unless the influence grows. I mean, that could theoretically happen because modern wrestlers watch him, but it's heavily based on one category here.
Yeah, 100%. We kind of already talked about it a little bit. Booker T. Any more to say about him?
I mean, at the moment. I mean, almost certain, unless Tam Nakano surprises me for the negative, that Booker T is going to be the weakest of all the new candidates here. And look, as a kid, I liked Booker T. Good wrestler, had the charisma and could talk, and you can see that in a different
likable
world.
Guy.
Yeah, I mean, he could, in a different world, he's probably going to do quite well for himself. But there's just historical significance is very good. I do think being one of the top 10 successful black wrestlers in America matters. But from a pure meat on the bone substance case, in terms of what gives him that credential, there's just not enough there with him.
As we've already alluded to, him returning, and it's like, what's changed? The TNA run, the commentating stuff. To me, it's like, I don't know why. what are we doing? Especially commentary stuff.
Some people are going to argue that the commentary stuff he's announcing helps the NXT talent, but look, to me, Stephanie Vaquer, if you think long term, is a cautionary tale here because, he helped get her over. And what's going on now?
Well, and also, like, there's also the personal thing of like, well, I don't necessarily like the way he got her over because it was very like sexualized sort of thing. I was like, well, that's a personal thing, obviously, but
that's exactly what I was. No, I agree with you because that's what I'm saying. That's not sustainable, though.
Yeah,
I hate to break it to the listeners.
And also, what is over? Is it Stephanie Vaquer? Or is it Booker T's commentary of doing would Stephanie Vaquer still be over if they move Booker T up to Raw for him to commentate Stephanie Vaquer matches? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and also if you're over primarily because of your look or whatever, your body parts or whatever, it's not sustainable. If you study history, that really isn't for men or women. Like there's a limit to like people get the perverts who watch wrestling for reasons that have nothing to do with wrestling, they're going to move on. They just are. Like that's not sustainable.
The perverts are always going to find other things to be perverts about.
Yeah,
famously,
it's kind of what they do. It's yeah.
We kind of move on from that comment. Los Espantos, we already kind of talked about. So I'll throw in here Kyoko Inoue.
She's a very good ballot. I mean, that's going to be interesting to see. Whether I have Tam, because Tam Nakano, Kyoko Inoue, I think is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Tam's a better draw. Kyoko, I think, is a better worker. Historical significance is good, but for different reasons. But again, my frustration with Inoue is not the candidacy. She is ballot worthy. She was eliminated in 2021. I can't tell you why she's back 5 years later just for the sake of it. And to be honest, I'm not going to say it's disrespectful, but asking voters to research a case that they revisited 5 years ago just for the sake, I don't know. I don't like this re-addition to the ballot.
Speaking of, we'll stay in the sort of non-newbies returning to the ballot people. Speaking of great, fun, non-controversial guys, Dick Murdoch.
Yeah. Look, okay. The Texas Outlaws were eliminated last year. That was Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch as a tag team were eliminated last year. I've got to be honest, my only issue with him being back on the ballot is he was not eliminated.
Yes.
Right? There was no break at all here. What basically happened is Dusty got dropped off. Dick Murdoch miraculously just hangs on now for God knows how long. There should have been a break, as there was for, Parata Morgan and all these other candidates that we've had in one variation or another. There's a little bit of a break, then they come back, right? Murdoch's case, I do think he's a Hall of Fame level worker. In fact, I would argue among the Americans for the 70s, you could argue he's the most talented. He can basically do it all. He can brawl, he can fly as far as flying went in that era. He can technically wrestle with the best of them. He can play babyface, he can play heel at the highest level. He was a great promo on the highest level in both. He could basically do it all. However, we have incredibly strong evidence that I could carry to court and feel very comfortable winning that he was a KKK member.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that.
You mean a fan club of the Killer Carl Cox community?
Yes. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's death. That bludgeons.
Yes.
At the end of the day, the Hall of Fame process is about honoring those who've done well in this business. It's about celebrating them, right? At the end of the day, that's what this is all about.
Yep.
I'm not celebrating a KKK member. There is no, and people are going to say, well, it's not relevant. Yes, it is.
It is.
There is no circumstance. I don't care what job you're applying for. Being a card-carrying member of the KKK is a relevant detail. Doesn't matter if you're working at a bank or where you're working. It matters, and it kills this case really, really badly.
We'll keep moving through people we discussed. We'll return return to the returnees later. Andreas Lambrakis.
Fantastic candidate. Hall of Fame level draw, one of the great draws in Europe. I'm not going to say history because we get new numbers all the time, but absolutely a Hall of Fame level draw. Very good historical value because of his drawing and what he meant to Greece in particular. There are, I think, some pretty serious question marks about his ability. I posted this in the channel, but for the listeners, there is consensus among the newspaper reports across different countries that he was pretty bad. The footage with Gorgeous George, he looks bad, but that's it's a gorgeous
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Gorgeous George exhibition match. He's not supposed to look good. But when there's multiple countries saying we don't really know why this guy's here, he's not very good, that's a little bit of a concern. Having said that, I would love to vote for him had the section been more accommodating, which at the moment it just isn't. Very
tough section. Very tough section this year. Gunther Walter. I love the guy as a worker. And kind of
I'm really close on this. I'm not gonna lie. I think he's right there.
Yeah.
The disadvantage for him is purely, I think, the fact that he's a modern candidate. He's still in the prime of his career. I just need a little bit of breathing room,
Same.
Because from a drawing perspective, you can't say he's nothing. He was basically a consistent top guy for a year and a half during a boom period for WWE. Last year, they were still officially in a boom period. They're still doing incredibly well. He's got
all of his main semi-main events. I think it might have changed recently, but all of his main and semi events, I believe, are all singles matches too. Which I'm like, oh, that's something.
Yeah, I mean, the Berlin show he headlined against Randy Orton. He was billed to be the top guy. He headlined in Austria, 9,000 sellout record gate. That's the best business WWE ever did.
Yeah.
In Austria, and some major matches. Right, Bill Goldberg's retirement is a major match.
AJ Styles,
Cena. Cena's retirement is a huge. It doesn't matter. Oh well, it was on TV. These are big. These are big matches. So he's,
But in the same breath of those being big matches, a little bit of it is the what have you done with me lately? Like the current thing, what has been the follow up to this guy since all these things? It's like,
I mean, they booked him. I mean, we can rant about the crappy booking of him if you want. Like, I mean, he's been booked terrible. I mean, a lot of guys have this year.
Oh yeah.
He's gone from retiring John Cena to just losing to Cody Rhodes all the time in mediocre matches. Massive questions on Cody Rhodes, by the way. I don't know what the fuck has happened there, but
Yep.
very concerning in terms of the down what's going on with him. But yeah, I mean, they've completely. Levesque does value him. I mean, that might be the saving grace. He might go back to him later and say, "Look, it was short term. Don't worry about it. We'll." Levesque does like him a lot, so hopefully he recovers. I do think he's a Hall of Fame worker. I have him top 5 times. I have him top 10 for 5 years, top 5 for 2 years, peaks at number 2. I mean, I rate him very, very highly. His historical significance, and this is the key, I think. Usually with modern candidates in this category, you need a bit of breathing room, right? To it's very difficult to accurately assess somebody who's an historical figure when it's history, right? It's about assessing the past. You need to wait for time to move forward a little bit.
And see the ramifications of the sort of, see the ripple effect.
Yeah, and even other things like, okay, is he one of the top 10 wrestlers of his era? His era's not over yet. I mean, most people first recognize him as an incredible wrestler in 2017. So, we just need to wait a little bit. I think this case will get better, and I will vote for him in a couple of years. He's basically in a very similar position to where Zach was for me on his first year, where I was like, okay, let's just wait a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to agree. I don't know how much more we can talk about this guy, Kane.
I mean, we've discussed it to death. Look, what one ballot appearance I can accept. 2, for the sake of it, I cannot accept. Yeah.
Let's talk about some other guys. Some of the returnees. Great Sasuke.
Interesting. He hasn't been on the ballot, I think, 14 years, something like that. It's been a long, long time. So, okay. A little bit more open-minded to this, especially considering Sabu, who was a contemporary, was inducted. Ultima has been inducted. Shima has been inducted, which is part of the Lucharesu legacy, right? So, okay, very interesting. Good timing.
Worthy, because of all this, worthy to be relooked?
No, very good timing, I think, on this one. This is very, very interesting. Above average draw. I mean, this guy for a small town promotion, he carried it, and he had notable numbers. He was an above average draw. Ability's a little. He got beat up. I mean, this guy had some very fucking serious injuries. Almost killed himself, right? I mean, he had some very serious injuries. Hall of Fame worker in '94 for sure. Overall, though, I'd say very, very good. I wish there was just more years to it. Post knee injury, he's really not the same. Historical significance. This is the one that I'm going to be fascinated to see because I don't vote for Hayabusa. I didn't vote for Sabu. I have no problem with him being inducted whatsoever, but I didn't vote for him. I didn't vote for Shima. I have no problem with him being inducted either. No problem at all. But if you are a voter who has voted for those and you're faced with Sasuke, what do you do here? Because this feels like I would take him over Hayabusa, to be honest. But Hayabusa has such a large voting percentage. I could see the voters there going, "No, we need to get him in now." But for them, I can see this being a real conundrum. For me, it's a little easy. I think he's absolutely ballot worthy, but I wouldn't vote for
him. Not really a returnee, just more of a shake-up on the ballot. But just more. I don't really want to discuss his case per se, but just sort of, how do you think he will do as he gets moved into historical U.S. and Canada? Bill Dundee. Not really a return, but just sort of a move, a shift.
I think technically he should do better. I think because it was him being in modern was weird to begin with. Like a lot of people just didn't really see him in that category. Because he
did 11.1% in modern last year, and then got shifted to historical.
I'm happy my prediction was correct because I did say I think he would just about survive. Yeah. I think I ranked him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I ranked him 7th in historical, so he should do all right. I mean, I'm not voting for. I don't think there's enough there, but very good wrestler for a very long time. I mean, this is a guy who didn't really age badly at all. He's very, very, very good wrestler. Did draw on top, heavily linked to Jerry Lawler. If you remove Jerry Lawler, you're losing basically everything with him. But he did also book Mid-South when they drew very well. So, that kind of counts to the case too. He is probably Jerry Lawler's greatest opponent, and Jerry Lawler is the biggest star ever in Memphis. That means something historically, and there's plenty here to he's very, very interesting. Again, I'm not quite there, but I have nothing against anyone who votes for him.
Back to where we left off in July, Kenta,
the strongest of the new candidates. I listened to your show, Joe Lanza, and I was on board all the way because I was like Joe. I was like, instinctive. I was like, borderline. Maybe let's see how he does. And then when you and Joe started talking about historical significance, I thought, did something happen? Did he drink? What the fuck happened to that? Like, Joe, I love you. Okay, I have nothing but respect for you, but he argued himself into arguing against again. I was absolutely baffled by it.
Yeah,
I was like, wait. He was like, well, does Kenta's influence really count towards historical significance? Doesn't it not count? Yes. The answer is yes to that question. Historical significance is synonymous with importance, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Influence can make you very, very important. If you've influenced people that matter, that makes you more important historically.
If you don't exist in the canon of pro wrestling, what is these other people's careers? What changes in all these other people's careers?
Having CM Punk, who's an official Observer Hall of Famer now, pretty much copy your shit directly, right? Explicitly copying your moves and admitting it, to be fair to him. He was like, oh yeah, I got it from Kenta. I would say that's quite important. Having Bryan Danielson, in my opinion, the greatest wrestler of the 2000s, copying your moves and big aspects of your style and admitting it, I would say that's quite important. I would say, yeah, he's very good. I would say being one of the top 5 wrestlers of the 2000s is quite important. I think that's historically valuable. Historical significance. He's really, really strong. He's very good here. Like, there's plenty to admire. But I know Joe's very iffy on this category. Like, he always kind of sees it as a sugar on top kind of thing. Yeah. And I think that's probably hurts his view of Kenta, which sucks because he loves Kenta. He's hurting his own cause, Joe.
Oh yeah, you can really hear in that episode.
Yeah, I was like, no, what are you doing, dude? Like, no, like, so for ability Hall of Fame level, and look, drawing, there's not a lot there, right? But factually, when you dive into the case, and this is the thing that I didn't know before I deep dived it, blaming him for Noah's decline is total nonsense.
Agreed.
That absolutely does not, objectively, the data doesn't support that. And I know, Ryan, you've done great work with your Google show on the Noah attendance figures. It just doesn't support it. It's, he's not really a consistent headliner until 2013. 2013, guess what? Their business is actually pretty stable year on year. So
it is in a downfall for those prior years.
Yeah, it's crashing. And look, it was crashing when Masao was alive. I think some people forget that, me included, right? I always focused on the post-Masao decline, which, look, Masao's death was always going to make it worse. It just,
Yeah, like I wouldn't necessarily say it was crashing the last couple of years of Masao, but it was down. It was directing downwards.
The loss of Kenta Kobashi full-time hurt them, and they didn't have somebody ready yet. Mm-hmm. They may have done, but then you get Masao's death, and there's a temporary bounce in 2010 because he died, and obviously that attracts a lot of attention, and they do big celebration shows and everything. But that was inevitably, at that point, you're thinking, okay, yeah, it's just going to turn into a high-level indie, which it did.
Yeah.
So lots of people were to blame for that, mostly out of their control. It just couldn't replace the top stars. But blaming Kenta, no.
And finally, Tibor Zakash.
He's fantastic. He's. I'm trying to
a preview for the next episode.
Yeah, I don't want to steal your guess. So okay, for drawing, the thing to note with him is that I did have him labeled as a top 10 headliner, I think, for over a decade in the UK. He main events a lot more than you think. Very much but again, UK is a small market, but he does main event the Bellevue, that's 5,000 plus. He does main event Royal Albert Hall. He arguably main evented the most famous Royal Albert Hall of the show of them all when royalty fucking arrived and wanted to check out what's going on, and It was him and John the Silver. So that's
a beautiful picture of him, mostly covered up by the trophy, by the cup, shaking up Prince Philip's hand.
Yeah. So I mean, he had and he won the Royal Albert Hall trophy was like a big deal, especially to the Southern promoters. He won it, I think, like 5 times. He won it a bunch of times. He was very highly valued.
5 times.
Yeah, which is more than anybody else did it. And as a worker, if you read the newspaper reports, very consistent. Pretty much from like 59 through the 60s. This guy is awesome. You can absolutely buy him as a Hall of Fame level worker. You can absolutely buy him as one. He's being compared to Gordienko, who was considered one of the best. He's being compared to Billy Robinson, who was considered one of the best. He's being compared to the upper echelon guys. And even early 70s in the footage, I think he's awesome. I think he's totally different to everybody else. And even when he's older, he's great. And they know he's great. That's why he has exhibition matches where he's just, hey, go out there, do your thing. We know who's winning. It doesn't matter. Just do your thing. People want to see it. So he's an excellent candidate. Again, brutal section. And I think he's vote worthy. He's another one of these guys that if you vote for, I wouldn't bat an eyelid. But I just don't think he quite crosses my line overall. And he's just in a devastating section, which is incredibly strong at the top end.
Yeah, it's a very strong section, and we'll learn a lot more about Tibor Zakasz next episode on the ballot. Ethan, thank you so much for coming on. Always a great time talking with you. I mean, I always ask this. Do you got any plugs or anything to let the good people at home find you and track you down?
I have no plugs. I'm incredibly difficult to find if you're not in Discord.
If you want to, I will say this, go to the VOW Discord. You're in the Hall of Fame chat all the time. You're sometimes in the ballot chat as well. You've been, like I said earlier, publishing your newbie sort of new inductees, not inductees, but nominees, I guess, in there. So if you want to read up a little bit of Ethan's writing and thoughts, you can go in there into the Voices of Wrestling Discord. Perfect. Ethan, it's been a pleasure as always talking with you. We'll be back next, probably in 2 weeks or so, hopefully in 2 weeks if everything still works out, talking about Tibor Zakasz with a brand new guest. And then again, if everything works out in September, hopefully a fun bonus episode there. So exciting stuff, ideally on the way, knock on wood, looking around, knocking a wall off the wood. But thank you everybody for listening to this month's episode of The Ballot. We'll be back later talking about Tibor. Until then, have a good one, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
The Ballot podcast was recorded and produced by myself, Ryan Knightsey, as part of the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. Please rate, subscribe, and most importantly, review the show wherever podcasts are found. To continue the conversation, please leave us a message at 9495-BALLOT or 949-522-5568. You could also join the VOW Discord and join us in the Ballot channel. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you next time on The Ballot.
Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragon Gate is how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragon Gate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.